The old dirt road beckoned them forward, a scar across the face of the forest. It was a path seldom travelled, shrouded in mystery and whispers of the past. The fog hung low, curling around their ankles like ghostly fingers, urging them to venture further. Laughter echoed through the trees, their youthful arrogance a shield against the growing shadows. The sound was both comforting and eerie, a reminder of their bond and the unknown that lay ahead. Each step they took seemed to amplify the forest's ancient secrets. Five friends, bound by laughter and secrets, ventured deeper into the woods, their path lost in the dappled sunlight. They had known each other for years, their friendship forged in the fires of shared adventures and whispered confidences. Today they sought a new thrill, unaware of the forest's hidden dangers. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. It was a scent that spoke of life and death, of cycles unbroken for centuries. The mist clung to their clothes, a cold reminder of the forest's embrace. "Are you sure this is the way?" Emily's voice was tight, her bravado fading with the light. She had always been the fearless leader, but now doubt crept into her mind. The forest seemed to twist and turn, each path looking the same. "It's getting creepy." She shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. The temperature seemed to drop with each step, the chill seeping into their bones. The once familiar woods now felt like a stranger, watching their every move. The forest seemed to press in, the trees looming over them like watchful giants. Their branches reached out like skeletal hands, casting long shadows that danced in the dim light. It was as if the forest itself was alive, breathing and observing. No one answered her. They all felt it, the shift in the atmosphere, a prickling unease that crawled under their skin. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant, unidentifiable sound. They exchanged uneasy glances, each wondering if they should turn back, but pride and curiosity pushed them onward. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. The woods grew darker, the shadows deeper and more menacing. The friends huddled closer, their laughter now hushed whispers. The silence was broken only by the rustling of leaves underfoot and the distant call of a night bird. "Do you hear that?" Mark whispered, his eyes darting nervously around. It sounded like whispering. The others strained to hear, their breath catching in their throats. There it was again, a low murmur carried on the breeze, seeming to come from the very trees themselves. Panic began to set in, a cold dread that tightened their chests and quickened their pulse. They stumbled forward, desperate to find their way out of the deepening darkness. Then it happened. A flash of movement in the periphery, a flicker of something unseen. "Look!" Emily's voice was a choked gasp. She pointed a trembling finger at a nearby tree. Carved into its gnarled bark was a face, grotesque, contorted in a silent scream. Its eyes, dark and empty, seemed to follow them as they moved. They ran then, blind with terror, crashing through the undergrowth. Thorns tore at their clothes, branches whipped at their faces, but they didn't stop. The forest echoed with their panicked breaths and the pounding of their hearts. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, mingled with a new sound, a low guttural growl that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. They were lost, hopelessly, terrifyingly lost. The familiar landmarks of the forest had vanished, replaced by a labyrinth of twisted trees and suffocating darkness. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of fear and something else, something ancient and evil. Exhaustion finally forced them to stop, their bodies trembling with fear and exertion. They collapsed on the forest floor, gasping for breath, their eyes darting around in terror. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every rustle of leaves sent shivers down their spines. "We're going to die here," whispered John, his voice cracking with fear. He reached out for Mary, his hand shaking. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." His words were lost in the sudden sharp intake of breath from Emily. Her eyes were wide with a different kind of fear, her gaze fixed on something behind them. "It's behind us, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. They didn't dare turn around. The darkness behind them felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy that made their skin crawl. The weight of unseen eyes, pressed down on them, heavy with malice. It was as if the forest itself was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The whispers were all around them now, slithering through the trees, coiling around them like venomous snakes. Each whisper seemed to carry a promise of doom, a chilling reminder of their helplessness. "We have to do something," Mark hissed, his voice tight with panic. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of escape, but finding none. "We can't just stay here." The words hung in the air, a desperate plea for action in a situation that seemed hopeless. But what could they do? Every direction seemed to lead deeper into the darkness, into the unknown. They were trapped, hunted by something as old and as dark as the forest itself, an ancient evil that thrived on fear and despair. The air grew colder, the temperature plummeting as a new wave of fear washed over them. Their breath came out in visible puffs, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness. "It's toying with us," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. She could feel the malevolent presence closing in, savoring their terror. "It wants us to be afraid." She was right. The entity thrived on their fear, drawing strength from their growing panic. They could feel it, the entity's delight in their terror, its amusement at their plight. It was a game to it, a cruel game with no escape. It was feeding on their fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. The more terrified they became, the more powerful it grew. An endless cycle of dread and despair. One by one, they faced their deepest fears. John the jock confronted his fear of weakness, his carefully constructed facade of bravery crumbling before the unseen entity. Mary, the popular girl, faced her fear of insignificance, her beauty and social status meaning nothing in the face of primal terror. And Emily faced her fear of abandonment. She saw herself alone and forgotten in the darkness, her screams swallowed by the indifferent forest. The entity whispered to them, promising power, offering escape in exchange for their souls. The air crackled with dark energy, the very fabric of reality seeming to fray at the edges. They were no longer running. Their legs, once full of energy and determination, now felt like lead. Every step had become a monumental effort, and the will to move forward had all but vanished. They were too tired, too broken. The forest seemed to sap their strength, feeding off their despair. Each breath was a struggle, each heartbeat a reminder of their vulnerability. The entity had taken something from them, replaced their youthful arrogance with soul-crushing dread. It had stripped away their confidence, leaving only raw, exposed fear in its wake. They huddled together, a tableau of fear and despair, as the forest closed in around them, its embrace both suffocating and strangely comforting. The trees seemed to whisper their doom, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. The sun, a pale ghost behind the dense canopy, offered no warmth, no solace. Its light was weak, barely penetrating the thick foliage, casting eerie shadows that danced like phantoms. They were lost, not just in the woods, but within themselves. Their sense of direction, both physical and emotional, had been obliterated. The forest was a maze, and their minds were no different. The entity had found the cracks in their facades, the hidden fears that lurked beneath the surface. It had exploited their insecurities, turning their inner demons into real, tangible threats. And it had used those fears against them, turning their once unshakable bond into a source of division and despair. Arguments erupted, trust eroded, and the unity they once cherished was now a distant memory, replaced by suspicion and blame. Dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of grey and lavender, but it brought no relief. The forest held them captive, its silence heavy with unspoken threats. They had faced their fears, but they had not escaped them. The forest held its breath, waiting. Its roots ran deep, its memory long. It had witnessed countless dawns, countless nights of terror. It had seen arrogance crumble, friendships fracture, and hope wither beneath the weight of fear. The forest remembered, and it would never let them forget.